Good evening and welcome to the virtual board meeting of the Board of School Directors of the School District of Springfield Township. And Mr. King, could you please call roll? Oh, actually, we're going to read the mission statement first. So as I'm forgetting everything that we need to do this evening. The reading of the mission statement: the mission of the School District of Springfield Township is to educate and develop all students as learners and citizens who are high-achieving, resilient, and responsible in a changing global community. Roll call, Mr. King.
Mr. Bedard.
Here.
Mr. DeFranco.
Here.
Dr. Atlin.
Here.
Ms. Jordan. Mr. Lapidus.
Here.
Mr. Needleman.
Here.
Ms. Sarsfield.
Here.
Ms. Slapinski.
Here.
Dr. Taratusky.
Here. There was a 20-minute executive session starting at 6:30 to discuss a personnel matter before we began the board meeting. Are there any public comments on agenda items? Okay, thank you. Administrative reports, Dr. Hacker. Oh, hold on one second. Angela Beal has requested to speak. Angela, can you just state your name and your address, please? You're muted.
Hi, everybody. Sorry. Hi, how are you today?
Good, how are you, Angela?
It's welcome. I know we're getting all together, and it's my daughter who actually has the computer, and she actually.
So just for the board record, can you just state your full name and your address?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. See, when I don't get to stand in front of you guys, I get all mixed up.
I understand.
Angela Beal Tawfiq, 525 East Willow Grove Avenue, Glenside, PA.
Okay, thank you.
And it's actually Sage Tawfiq who is going to be presenting, not me in terms of open comment.
Okay, is this with regard to a particular item on the agenda, or
Absolutely.
Is this a general comment?
It's the wrong time. It's at the end.
Okay, that's fine. Not a problem. Just want to make sure that we get you in at the right time.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. We just have a few items on the agenda. We have some administrative reports. Dr. Hacker.
Thank you, Dr. Taratusky. First of all, let me just start off by welcoming everyone. We don't normally have a July board meeting, so it's nice to see everyone in the month of July. I hope everyone had a wonderful July 4th holiday weekend and that you all were able to stay safe, especially if you went to the beach. I also wanted to let everyone know that we had 4 very successful building focus groups last week. I know some of you were able to participate in those. I just want to thank all of our staff members and family members who were able to take time to participate in those focus groups. Each one lasted 2 hours, and they were rich with discussion, with questions, with the identification of concerns, as well as recommendations and input. And I want to assure everyone who was in attendance during those focus groups that we took all of the notes that were sent to us from those breakout sessions, which were held during each focus group. We're going to be going over all of that information and taking it all into consideration as we continue with our planning for the reopening of schools in the fall. Our intent at this point, as those who were in attendance at the focus group meetings are aware, is to go back 100%, have all of our students come back, but we do know that we have some families out there who have some pretty major decisions to make about what they feel they are comfortable with. What we are trying to do is minimize the risk that will be present in schools, but we know no matter what we do, there is going to be inevitably some concern on the part of staff members as well as our families. And we will do the best we can between now and the opening in order to continue to provide a lot of information and communication so that our families are aware of exactly what our plans are for the reopening of school in September. So there are two things that I would like to clarify that actually are changes from last week and even from yesterday in my messaging that I sent out to our community. The first is a clarification from a statement that I made in the message that I sent out yesterday. At the time the message was sent out, we had been informed through the Secretary of Education that the General Assembly was not going to permit any type of hybrid option for the reopening of schools. And by hybrid, I mean in school for 1 or 2 days or every other day, then off a day, then the other half of students coming in. So that hybrid option where we would be both at home as well as in our physical buildings was something that many school districts had actually been looking at as an option. None of the districts in Montgomery County at this particular point are considering a hybrid option. But nonetheless, there was some discussion around that, and we were told that it was not feasible because it would not satisfy school code attendance requirements, which require students to be involved in instruction a minimum of 180 days per year, or 900 or 990 hours for older students. Unfortunately, I learned today that very shortly after I sent out my messaging, there was a reversal of that particular position, and that hybrid options will be allowed pursuant to a provision in the public school code. It's provision school code 520.1. And what it says there is that a board has the authority in an emergency situation to enact temporary provisions, and that it can be able to approve a reduction in the length of time for instruction and can keep schools in session during that emergency without students being present for the required number of days. That must be board approved if we were to go to a hybrid option, which of course we would bring to the board for their consideration. And as of now, that is an interpretation of what school code says by the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So if the General Assembly were to determine that that interpretation is not correct, then any waiver for hybrid options would have to disappear. So in other words, the General Assembly would have to approve PDE's interpretation that a hybrid option is in fact available. As I said, that's not really a strong consideration for our district or any other district in the county at this point, but I did want to share that correction since I had already put out different information to the community, and I felt I wanted the more accurate information that I learned of today to be out there publicly. The second change is the governor's order, which came into play on Thursday, requiring all individuals in the state of Pennsylvania to wear masks. And one thing that I do want to emphasize, because I know that there is some concern among some family members about the ability of children to be able to wear masks, particularly younger children, all day long. But this is an executive order from the governor that applies to all residents in all situations. This is not just about wearing masks in schools. It applies to wearing masks inside any indoor space and outdoors when individuals cannot maintain social distancing of a minimum of 6 feet. So I do want to clarify that this is not something that we are enacting unilaterally as a school district. It is an order from the governor for the entire state, and therefore we are obligated to comply with this order. That being said, we will certainly look at ways in which we can give children opportunities to get outside and to social distance outside so that they do not have to wear masks 100% of the day. We know that's problematic for many children. And we also want to be able to give them mask breaks, but we have to look into how we can efficiently and effectively do that in order to still keep students protected. I do want to say that in a meeting that the county superintendents, myself included, had with Dr. Valerie Arkush today, and we meet with her every single week, Val summed it up simply by saying this: we are all a community within the county, and it is imperative that we all do the best that we can to do everything we can to protect one another. Regardless of what we think about such an order, the idea behind wearing a mask is to minimize exposure and minimize the risk of someone transmitting the disease or exposing others to this terrible disease. So we all have an obligation to comply with the governor's order in order to begin to reverse the terrible trend that we are now seeing of an increase in cases in many states. And the reason for the increase in those cases, as we've all noted, if we watch the news, is because we see numbers of people at bars, restaurants, beaches, outdoor gatherings, not social distancing and not wearing masks. So those are two of the most effective measures that we all can implement. So I just wanted to share those two updates. And as I said, we will continue to keep our community informed about the steps and measures that we are taking in order to try to get us back to school safely in September.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. Okay. So let's move to new business. Personnel. The Board of School Directors approves the following personnel as presented in the attachment: extended school year program personnel and extra pay for extra responsibilities. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Mr. King?
Mr. King, you are on mute.
You're muted.
Right, the motion has been read and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? And the motion carries.
Number 2, election of superintendent of schools. The Board of School Directors elects Dr. Mary Jo Yannicone as superintendent of schools of the School District of Springfield Township effective December 5th, 2020 through December 4th, 2025 at an initial annualized starting salary of $204,407 per year, subject to the contract between the School District of Springfield Township and Dr. Mary Jo Yannicone, and further subject to the official motion to elect prepared by the district solicitor. Is there a motion?
I enthusiastically motion.
I enthusiastically second.
Any comments or questions?
And I would like to enthusiastically comment that I'm really thrilled for Dr. Yannicone. I think this is a wonderful step that our board has taken in selecting her. She is extraordinarily skilled and has wonderful judgment and problem-solving skills, and I know that she's going to be able to take over the reins of this wonderful school district. That is, if I can possibly tear myself away in December. And I know that she will do a spectacular job in leading the district forward through many wonderful new initiatives. I just want to commend the board on conducting a very thorough search process. I know that many other candidates were considered, so it's a credit to Dr. Yannicone that despite being an internal candidate, that she nonetheless was able to rise above all of the other candidates in order to become the next superintendent. She and I will have a lot to work on together as we work on her transition in the fall, and we'll have an opportunity to hopefully spend a significant amount of time together as I introduce her into all the many facets of helping to lead a school district. So congratulations, Mary.
Thank you, Dr. Hacker. Yes, it is a bit of an ominous time to be handing over the reins over this next year, but it will be a bittersweet one. And but we are excited to be able to bring Dr. Yannicone on board. As Dr. Hacker said, she did impress the board far and away above all of the other candidates that we had interviewed. So. Welcome aboard, Mary Jo. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
The motion has been read and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Motion's carried.
Number 3, MCIU E-rate services. The Board of School Directors approves the E-rate application services agreement with the MCIU to complete the E-rate application process on behalf of the district, including all applicable forms for the 2021-2022 E-rate funding year cycle for a total fee of $6,300. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Mr. King?
Excuse me, Dr. Taratuski, was that
Yes.
Ms. Slapinski who's second?
It was Dr. Etlin.
Dr. Etlin, thank you. I'm
Mhm.
sorry.
Okay. All right.
Motion on the table?
Yes.
Motion has been seconded. Been made and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 4, sewage service, New Enfield. The Board of School Directors approves the sewage service agreement with Bucks County Water and Sewer Authority, BCWSA, in connection with the New Enfield Elementary School upon final approval of the superintendent and solicitor, Attachment A. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
Motion has been read and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Number 5, athletics and safety, health and safety plan. The Board of School Directors approves the athletics, health, and safety plan for the school district. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second?
Second.
Any comments or questions?
I do have a question. I'm assuming I looked through it. It's very comprehensive. My assumption is, just like every other piece of guidance that we have regarding COVID-19, that 3 weeks from now, we may need to revisit some of the assumptions made in that plan. 6 weeks from now, we may need to revisit those. What is the process that we have for making sure that we're, up to date by the time students would be interacting with each other?
Jeff, that's a great question. First of all, I just want to clarify that one of the reasons that we are board approving the athletic health and safety plan this evening is because we plan to start conditioning practices next week on July 13th. So it's very important because board approval for both the athletic health and safety plan and ultimately a district health and safety plan, which I referenced before, which we will have to publish on our website as well, have to be continually updated and therefore continually board approved. So your question really is timely because if there are changes or adjustments that will need to be made, we will bring our health and safety plan, whether it's the athletic one or the district one, back to the board again to say we made the following changes, you need to board approve this once again. So for this particular plan, this is current as of now, and then what we will do is make adjustments along the way if either PIAA changes some of its rules or we get new instructions from the state or from PDE, we will bring it back to the board in August and ask for those changes to be board approved again.
Thanks, Dr. Hacker. Any other comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
The motion has been read and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries.
Number 6, Access Program Settlement. The Board of School Directors approves the stipulation of settlement with the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, the Department of Human Services, and the Office of Medical Assistance Programs to finalize the district's 2013-2014 School-Based Access Program Cost Settlement Appeal as recommended by the Finance Committee. Is there a motion?
Motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Okay, Mr. King?
Motion has been read and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? The motion carries.
Okay, are there public comments on non-agenda items? So this is the time where our public attendees can speak if they so choose. I see Sage has his hand raised, and Sage, if you could just state your full name and where you live, and then please share your comment.
Hi, my name is Sage Tawfiq. I live at 525 East Willow Grove Ave in Glenside. My comment is on the fact that, well, first I want to make it clear that I'm a senior at the high school, and I wanted to say that the school has very high academic standards, but I've come to realize that the school's curriculum has failed to fully educate students on other races and cultures that have contributed to the growth of America. And I'm also a member of the NAACP Youth Leadership Group, and many other students like me, both outside the group and inside the group, believe that in order to close this gap within our educational curriculum, American Studies should become a full credit and required course. African American Studies should become a full credit and required course. I'm sorry. African American history should also be integrated throughout the K through 12 curriculum throughout the entire academic year, not just Black History Month. And it's very important that you diversify the teaching force at the middle and high school level, not just the elementary level. And finally, African history should be a part of the world history curriculum, and that means not just Egypt.
Thank you, Sage. We appreciate that you have chosen this opportunity to speak up. It really does take a lot of courage, particularly in this forum, to share your thoughts with the board and the members of the administration that are here, and of course the members of the public. And we will take your comments, and we do have committee meetings where we discuss curricula, and we will certainly take all of those comments into consideration.
Can I just add that the Academic Affairs Committee meetings are open to the public as well?
Mm-hmm.
So you're welcome to come to those meetings as well.
Okay. All right. I see. I saw a few hands raised, but now I don't see them anymore. Let me see.
Dr. Taratowski, if I can just interject, I did see a question about when the Academic Affairs Committee meetings are. We generally hold our first Academic Affairs Committee a few weeks after the school year has started, so I anticipate that will most likely this year be towards the end of September, and we will announce that at our September board meetings. We will have 2 board meetings during the month of September, and at those meetings we will announce when the date is for our Academic Affairs Committee meeting. It remains to be seen at this point as to whether or not that will be an in-person meeting or a Zoom meeting. I just also want to really take this opportunity to thank Sage. I know she spoke on behalf of a number of students who have become involved in discussing these issues which are impacting our students. And it's very, very critical for our students to have a voice. It's one thing if we as employees and staff members have a voice in how we govern, but it's also really critical that students have input into the issues that impact them, and nothing impacts them more than curriculum. And students want to see themselves reflected in the curriculum that they study. And that is a legitimate concern for all students, and it's something that we honor as well. So Sage, I just want to take this opportunity. Like I said, I know you spoke on behalf of a number of students who came together to meet and to discuss these issues. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you is I will be speaking with our administrators at each of our schools, but especially the high school, to talk about ways in which we can continue to incorporate more student voices so that we can hear from you about these issues. And what I particularly respect and like about what you said is the fact that you gave us proactive thinking ideas about moving forward. And that's what's really helpful, is that when we can work together on planning things for the future that are going to help us improve what we do, that is the most beneficial thing at all. So I just wanted to lend my thanks to what you did and the courage that you had to speak up before the board this evening.
I do see two other hands. Gabrielle Green, if you would like to speak, just state your name, your full name, and where you live.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle Green. I'm a 10th grader at Springfield Township High School. I live at 902 Summit Lane in Orland, PA. And I was just wondering two things. How thoroughly is the board involved in that academic committee? And also, what are your specific plans to incorporate African American history into our education system?
Thanks, Gabrielle. To answer your question about the Academic Affairs Committee, it is a subcommittee of the board. And so there are 3 to 4 board members as a standing part of that committee, as well as our administrators from all of our buildings. And administrators come in and out basically based on the topics and the curricula that we're discussing at the time, as well as our teacher department leaders at the high school are part of those meetings, and any member of the public can come to be part of those meetings. We have them about 4 times a year. And the district does have plans for revision of curricula on a rotating basis, but we are always looking at, particularly as we get suggestions and recommendations from the public, from teachers, from our administrators, or we get other directives, then we would be looking to revise our curricula.
Okay, thank you. Also, I was wondering how, as members of the NAACP Youth Committee, how can we be involved in that specific committee? Is there any way that we can do that?
Absolutely. You can be, we publish those dates on our website. We announce them at board meetings. And so you can always check the school board page of the website so that you know when it's coming up. You can always email the board too if you're not sure, if you haven't seen that, or email Dr. Hacker if you have questions, or Dr. Rittenhouse.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up, Dr. Tarataski. I'm glad you mentioned that. Now that I'm aware of this youth group through the NAACP, the Youth Leadership Group, I can actually reach out, and I think what would also be productive is, in addition to coming to an Academic Affairs Committee meeting, we begin having some conversations prior to that opportunity to really delve more deeply into some of the other issues that you've been talking about in your group. So we can reach out to your group right at the start of the school year and find some ways to come together and have these conversations, which I think would also be really productive in addition to your coming to those meetings, Gabrielle and Sage.
Yes, thank you so much. I 100% agree. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabrielle.
And Gabrielle, on behalf of the board, I would love for you and your fellow leaders on the NAACP youth group to attend every meeting that we have. I don't want to put work on your plate, but we would love to hear your voice. We see you, we hear you, and we want to make sure that we incorporate ideas into the curriculum and how we think about the school district moving forward. Thank you for being here tonight.
Okay. All right, thanks. I see Joshua has his hand raised. Joshua, could you just state your full name and where you live for the board?
Hi, my name's Josh Williams. I live in Orland, Pennsylvania. Basically, my bigger question was going to be in reference to, I know you guys have expressed how basically the curriculum is more so discussed during the actual meetings with the, I believe it's described as the curriculum team, I guess. But my question is, I guess, is this board also in charge of sometimes like the hiring practices? Because I know Dr. Hacker has expressed in other meetings that there is some type of plan or initiative to have some sort of conversation upon the re-arrival of students into school about everything going on with both the protests, the murders that have occurred. So my bigger question is that what are we looking at in the sense of hiring practices to have individuals that are equipped to handle these conversations? Because I know, again, with the conversations I've had with Dr. Hacker in different meetings, she's expressed teachers' concerns with tackling these issues and even how that kind of makes them shy away from wanting to incorporate that in curriculum. So one, does the board have hiring powers or practices to put in initiatives for not only the curriculum side, but the actual hiring practices to have people equipped to handle the new curriculum we'd like to see in place?
So I hear a couple of things in your question. With regard to hiring, and I'm thinking that what you're referring to is more so professional development and in helping our teachers gather the skills that they need to have these conversations with our students. And that is part of the professional development plan. Dr. Hacker, if you want to speak to that.
Yeah, I think more specifically with respect to hiring, we have actually incorporated questions around cultural proficiency, equity, and bias and discrimination into the questions that we actually use whenever we conduct interviews with our candidates.
Okay.
That is something that we worked on through our Equitable Practices Committee work. We had teachers, including teachers of color, who sat on our hiring committee and who offered suggestions in terms of how we could attract not only a more diversified workforce, but teachers who solidly believed in the values that we were hoping to promote within the district. And of course, equitable practices is a significant value that we all hold in this district. So we actually changed the type of questions that we now ask in our interviews with candidates to reflect those values, to ensure that the people that we are hiring also believe in those same values, because we want to make sure that the people that we bring into the district are committed to this work as well.
And if I could just ask one second follow-up question. This is more so just based on my ignorance on how, I guess, Springfield's curriculum is developed. Is it a situation where teachers have more leeway to develop how they necessarily want to teach history, or is it more of like a mandatory set guidelines based on like textbooks or something that's predetermined?
Yeah, Josh, that's a great question, especially for people who kind of might be outside of the system and aren't familiar with how that happens. But actually, again, I will share with you that we have adopted the social justice standards from Teaching for Tolerance from the Southern Poverty Law Center, which again actually has been a large portion of the work that has been integrated into our curriculum. particularly the social studies curriculum, but in all facets of curriculum as well. And that also came about as the result of recommendations actually from parents, one of whom is listening this evening and is attending this board meeting because of the work and their familiarity with those social justice standards. So curriculum is always evolving, and it takes input from students, from parents, as well as from staff members in terms of when we look at curriculum to revise, we look at it from a lot of facets, a lot of viewpoints, from current research, from readings that are out there, and from obviously trying to incorporate the kind of standards that I just mentioned. Obviously, we have state standards that we have to adhere to, but we also want to make sure that our curriculum is more representative and reflective of our student body and the things that we believe in this day and age they should be learning. And that, of course, includes current events. So it is multifaceted. It does include a significant amount of professional development and training for our staff members, as Dr. Taratusky mentioned. So for example, prior to the shutdown this spring, we had Dr. Crystal Lucky, who is a professor of African American Studies at Villanova University, who works in their English department, come in and actually work with our English language arts staff about diversifying the novels and the work that they are doing in English language arts. So curriculum is always evolving, and it's not just what teachers want. It's a combination of what we all believe as stakeholders is and should be representational of what we believe students should be learning.
Okay, thank you, appreciate it.
You're welcome, Josh. Good question.
Thank you, Josh. So I do see another question from Gabrielle Green, or another comment from Gabrielle.
Yes, I would like to know how the board feels with implementing us, the students, in the hiring process. Like the board would make a general selection based on credentials, and students are able to give input and sort of narrow down the selection based on how well the teacher teaches the lesson and how well we obtain the information.
Dr. Hacker, do you want to address the involvement of the board or the students actually in that process? Because we do have teachers teach a lesson. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let me address the students because, Gabrielle, we actually use students in every single one of our schools. One of the requirements as part of the hiring process that we typically use is to put the teacher in front of a group of students and solicit input from those students in terms of how that lesson went, how they felt the teacher related to them, what the level of engagement was on the part of the students. So it is actually typically part of our hiring process that the teacher has to do an actual lesson in front of students. Now, obviously during the period of the pandemic, that's kind of been put aside, and a lot of the hiring that we do sometimes over the summer, it is hard to bring students together, especially during the crisis. But I will tell you, even at times over the summer, we have brought students in order for teachers to do a demonstration lesson in front of groups of students. So we do bring students into the hiring process.
I'm glad that is something that we are doing. I think that's really effective in terms of picking a teacher, but I would also like to make sure that when making a selection based on a teacher for African American Studies, that it is mostly minority based in the classroom, because students are able to make a selection that are minorities rather, since it'll be their history that they will be teaching. So I just want to make sure that's important when selecting a teacher.
Well, I will tell you that the teacher for the new African Studies course that we've approved in the curriculum is Mr. Len Thompson.
Yes, I did hear about that. I think that's a great start to the ultimate goal here.
Thanks, Gabrielle.
Thank you. Candace Harrison, if you could just state your full name and your address for the record. Candace, did you want to speak?
Dr. Taratuski, I need to promote her to a panelist because she's using an older version of Zoom.
Oh, okay.
So when I do that, you'll see her appear in the grid panel.
Okay,
All right.
that's fine, thanks. Okay, Candace?
Hi, my name is Candace Harrison. I'm from Orland, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
As for the middle school social studies curriculum, if students are required to take the world history class, they should be learning about world history and not just European history. As of right now, as well as before, the world history class mainly focused on European history. Like I said before, students should be learning about other history. Ancient African history, that being Western African countries, Eastern African countries, and Southern African countries, aren't being talked about at all. As said before, if students are going to learn about world history, they should be learning about the broad, like they should have a broad understanding of history throughout the world.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you, Candace. Thanks for bringing that to our attention and for sharing that information. We certainly do, when we look at curriculum, we do look at it across all grade levels, not just in one specific area. We want to make sure that everyone has some exposure and that topics are covered at all grade levels.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Candace. Are there any other comments on non-agenda items?
Well, I could just interject as a
Sure.
member of the Academic Affairs Committee. I know that we, Dr. Hacker, we just approved, a change of world history, U.S. history, kind of the whole layout has changed. So I'm wondering about, the possible integration. Obviously, this is possibly a conversation for later, but just to kind of, thinking ahead of how we might be able to, because the change has occurred, how this, how we might be able to infuse our new curriculum with what we're hearing the needs of our students really are, and how we might be able to accommodate that, and just what that might look like.
Yeah, and again, that's something I think we certainly can consider. Obviously, as we look ahead to the year, a lot of this is going to depend upon what school looks like and how long we're in school in person in order to be doing this work. So we do have some concerns around that, as well as budgetary issues, because this is a tough year, as we all know. But it's a commitment, obviously, that we have, is to continually look at what is it that we're teaching, how relevant is it, and how, again, does it reflect what we believe our students should be learning. So I think this is certainly a valid and legitimate concern about the world history course, and it may be that we can even tweak aspects of it as we move forward when we get back to school in September. We certainly can look at that.
Okay. Angela, Beal, Tawfiq?
So with that, my normal meeting, I just would like to say a comment of, thank you so much to hearing the children's voices, but also thanking Dr. Hacker for this time of great challenge and difficulty across the country, across the globe. And I think one of the things that, for the work that she has been doing from the Multicultural Parent Association through the work with now the transition and the students and dealing with the parents, as I've been on multiple parent meetings with regard to COVID preparations in school and planning. I just thank you for standing strong in this time of change, a time of change where many don't want to have the courageous conversations that we're saying we're doing to try to address the global citizen and community, and to thank you for staying strong and staying the course when others may not, may have other perspectives, voices, and things like that, but being willing to address and continue to address the conversations in the district to lead the way for Dr. Yacone also as she's stepping into your shoes. So thank you.
Thanks, Angela. That's very kind of you. I do appreciate that greatly.
Thanks, Angela. I see Sage has her hand raised again.
Yeah, I'm sorry. After listening to everyone else discuss and talk, I also wanted to leave you with this as to why integrating African American history is very important in eliminating interpersonal racism that's sadly instilled into many students at a really young age. And definitely eliminating that could help topple down stigmas that are institutionalized inside of our country today. So definitely seriously considering doing this and not just glossing past it in history as if African Americans and other races that have contributed to the growth of this country are background characters in a movie.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to leave you guys with that. But also, I really appreciate you genuinely listening to our requests and our comments and questions.
Thanks, Sage. We do appreciate that. And as the board has said many times, we do have a strong commitment to this, and we truly value your comments this evening. Josh Williams.
Yeah, I just had one final question. I know that in the sense of sometimes in changing curriculum and infusing uncomfortable topics such as race sometimes can lead to sometimes it's student complaints, sometimes it's parent complaints, sometimes it's teacher complaints. But I am curious in a sense of to know from the board, like when those complaints come, whether they be on the student level, teacher level, or parent level, how do you guys handle situations like that or tackle situations like that if like a changing of curriculum leads to more friction or like some level of controversy? Like what's kind of the tack that you guys take?
So Josh, I guess I'll start by saying that I would say most of the time, the greater majority of the time, those complaints don't go to the board. They will instead go to either individual teachers, perhaps a parent complains because a student has come home and has complained about the way in which a topic was broached in class, or the way a teacher addressed an issue, or it will come to the building principal, or to myself. That's generally more or less the chain of command when there are complaints about any aspect of the school programming. And as far as handling those issues, it really depends on the nature of what the issue is about. You know, our responsibility is to listen. Sometimes, you know, your first instinct when you hear a complaint is to think, oh, they're right or they're wrong. But our job really is to listen and then to investigate. And that's the primary responsibility that we have, is to really look at both sides of where that complaint is coming from, to see what is legitimate and what perhaps is not or has been exaggerated, and to really speak to all sides. So whether it's a student disciplinary issue that a parent raises concerns about, or comments that are made in the classroom, we do try to investigate and see what's going on, and to try to really gather as much information as we possibly can. So each situation with respect to any type of concern that arises is unique and different, and we treat it as such.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Hacker. Any other comments or questions?
Dr. Tarantusky, I would
Sure.
like to just make a comment.
Sure.
I would like to extend a wonderful comment to the young people who spoke this evening with their delivery that was very, very well framed, very thoughtful, and showed a lot of insight into their thinking, and if I may say, very well received. So again, I'd like to commend the young people who spoke this evening.
Thanks, Dr. Etlin. Okay. All right, with no more comments, we will move to announce future meeting dates. There will be an interim board meeting scheduled on Tuesday, August 4th, 2020 at 7 p.m. and the location is to be determined. Regular board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, August 18th at 2020 at 7 p.m. Also location to be determined. There is a property committee that will be held Wednesday, July 29th at 8:30 a.m. and that will be a virtual Zoom meeting. Okay. All right, thank you all for attending this evening and thank you to those who spoke. We do appreciate your participation in our meetings and hearing your comments and this partaking in our meeting. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.